I'm based here in Mildura. My background is viticulture. I studied at Charles Sturt University many moons ago. I'm independent, so I don't work for any of the chemical companies. I work with a lot of independent growers and the corporates. I help with spray programs, bud dissections, basically a technical service, anything to do with viticulture. So today I'm just purely doing a refresher course. I'll ask you some questions and yeah, I'm just going to touch on a few things in the vineyard that you hopefully you know about. I'm sure you've got way more experience than I have in dried fruit, so we'll start. So I'm just going to present a little bit about pest and disease monitoring, some of the control strategies, preventative sprays and controls that we can use. Monitoring. So do many of you go out in the field and have a look around in the rows, and or do you employ anyone, or do you just fill up your spray card every 14 days and off you go? A few nods. Okay.
Do try and get out and obviously have a look occasionally, but it's not
monitoring, it is very time consuming. It's very important to get an idea of also see where your growth stages are at. Also with nutrition, you might pick up yellowing in the leaves, maybe a bit more iron or zinc, and like with what your snail populations are doing, and where your weeds are at. So yeah, on foot in the vineyard on a fortnightly basis is quite a good idea just to see where things are at. The reason why we do fortnightly sprays, rule of thumb in a region like Sunraysia is a shoot growth will generally grow 1 centimetre a day. So in a 14-day period, we've got 14 centimetres of new growth. So that's uncovered tissue that's very vulnerable to fungal diseases like downy mildew, powdery, botrytis. For monitoring, one of the key things is weather. So in warm, wet weather, we would expect to maybe see some downy if we get more than 10 mils of rain. During veraison, when the berries are starting to soften, some berry split that will lead to rot. With the humid, overcast days is powdery. This is a region that powdery mildew is it's a very common disease in viticulture. It likes temperatures between 24 and 28 and a nice cloud cover. Early detection of any pest and disease is far better than when you found it. It's like, oh gosh, what am I going to do? If you can find the early stages of the disease, you've got options to treat it. Tools that you might use, hand lenses. Flagging tape's always really good because if you can tag a shoot and then you put your spray out and then you can come back and actually see whether you've controlled your pest or your disease. Yeah, driving through in the ute with the window down is probably not an accurate way of monitoring. And out there at night with a torch, not best practice either. Modern technology has come a long way in the last probably 5 to 6 years. Everyone's got smartphones, devices, iPads, iPhones. So things like the weather is really, really important in viticulture and farming. My phone, I have a couple of apps for weather. I generally use Weather Zone, but I'll also bounce off the Bureau of Met and Elders. They're all free to download. And the weather the radar is really important, especially during that spring period. Spray kits. So who calibrates their sprayer before spring? Everybody? Yeah. August is always a good time. It's we're finished pruning, we're just waiting for bud burst. Calibration of the machines is very essential. You want to know that you've got your nozzles are nice and clean, they're unblocked, all your hoses are well connected, and most of all that your output of water is what you expect it to be. A lot of growers will spray and I'll say, oh, so how many litres a hectare are you doing? And they're like, round about, 600. Is it roundabout, or are you doing 600 litres a hectare? It's really important because it comes back to when you're mixing your tank mix up, is your concentration factor correct as well. Also knowing your target when you are out there spraying, and what part of the canopy. Are you spraying the tips for light brown apple moth? Are you spraying the bunch zone, or are you spraying the trunks? So to have your nozzle set up to direct into the canopy is really, really important. I see lots of growers, you'll be driving down the road and there's more misty spray going up in the air, and it's like they're wasting so much spray. And spray coverage is really, really important. Do any of you use, when you've calibrated your spray cart, do you go out at any time in the season and use water sensitive paper, like staple it to a leaf or a bunch to make sure that you are getting good coverage? No? Yeah, ours is good. These are really good. Yes, they are expensive. They're made in Switzerland, but you get 50 in a packet, and they're really, really good in the sense that you staple them before you go spraying, staple them to the underside of the leaf, to the back of a bunch. They're yellow when you start, then as soon as they get any form of moisture, whether it's a fingerprint or a droplet, then you'll get a blue droplet. And that will indicate how your spray is coming across onto your foliage and to your bunches. So fine droplet sizes are better practice for fungicide sprayings. There's now a new app out. You can go out, you can take a photo of the water sensitive paper, and the app will tell you where your percentage of coverage is. So these are really, really good. Sprays. So people talk about there's different sprays. There's contact sprays or cover sprays, there's systemic sprays. The two that are very common in viticulture are contact or protectant or cover sprays, which is what we call our wettable sulphurs, our copper and our magnesium. They are sprays that we need to apply every 10 to 14 days because they are not absorbed into the leaf or the foliage. They just purely sit on top of the leaf. The systemic sprays are our important sprays. They are the ones that will provide control against fungal spores like downy, powdery and botrytis throughout the season. So here, this is our cover spray. So our copper, sulphur, magnesium just sits on the top of the leaf. And then our systemic spray will move right throughout the xylem and the phloem and go right through plant tissue. So that gives you the better spray coverage and protection against fungal attack. So the three key things I'm just going to touch base on, light brown apple moth, powdery mildew and downy mildew, all pretty relevant to this region. Light brown apple moth, do you use trapping devices? Does anyone? No? So, right, okay. So light brown apple moth are present. They're present in the vineyard all year round. Generally, we are spraying for caterpillars or grubs. The adult moths will overwinter in cover crops and native trees, cakeweed, and also clover. Then during early spring, the females will lay eggs, and then the warm degree days of temperature will determine when the eggs will hatch. By having traps in the vineyard, you only need, say, one per block or one every couple of acres. So you put these out, you put them in the canopy, and they have a sticky base on them. The grey is a pheromone lure, so this will only attract light brown apple moth species. So every fortnight you go out, you have a look in your trap, and you count the moths on your sticky base. As the numbers incline, that will give you an indication of when the females are going to have a flight and when she will have an egg-laying mass. And once those eggs have been laid, the caterpillars will hatch. So the caterpillars will hatch. There's 6 instar phases, but stages 1, 2 and 3 are found very early in the season. So from probably 10 centimetre shoot growth is a time that you want to start looking. Here in Sunraysia we have 3 to 4 generations in a season, and the best time of control is early season, definitely before flowering. we get into flowering, the caterpillars will web themselves into the bunch, and it's really hard to get those sprays in. So trapping devices, so we've got a couple. This is the one that I was talking about. This is a delta trap. You can use, some growers will use a port wine trap, where you don't use a base, you just attract them through a sugar solution, through port wine. Place the trap about halfway down the row on the cordon wire, and it will stay in the vineyard for the whole season. Go out there each fortnight, have a look in the trap to see how many moths are on there. So this one here, I think I counted probably 44 moths. That's a lot of moths. So when the numbers get to that stage, you're expecting to start finding 1 and 2nd instar moths in them. Not only in the tips, but also in the young leaves and the young shoots. So for control for light brown apple moth, what do most people do? Do you nothing? You don't. It's not a necessity, or
Used to,
used to.
but we stopped and we haven't had any problems.
No problem. Yeah. So your threshold numbers have been really low. Okay. So majority to control light brown apple moth is to prevent the onset of botrytis coming into veraison and at harvest. So there's a couple of options. One of the biological options is Dipel. I really like it. It's user friendly. It's not toxic. It's what we call a BT spray. You can throw that in with your cover sprays right from bud burst. And what that does, it sits on the leaf. As the caterpillar chews through the leaf, it basically dissolves its stomach. The other specified products are Prodigy, Avatar and Delegate. These also target egg masses, and they will take out the young instar up until the third and fourth instar stage. So here you've got a flowering bud, well, the bunch is flowered and you've gone into peppercorn stage. In here, the light brown apple moth here is webbed as berries together, so here he is sitting down here. So once they get to that stage, that's when it's hard to really target the pest for control. The other topic is powdery mildew. We all know about powdery mildew. It's a sleeping giant. It's one of the most common fungus diseases in the world for viticulture. It overwinters in bud scales, and it loves warm temperatures at 24 to 28 and overcast days. Early season, we'll notice flag shoots. They're a very highly infested bud that has grown out. The leaves are very cupped. They're yellow, and they're one of your primary sources of the spores of powdery mildew. From bud burst through to flowering, through to 30-50% flowering is the most critical time to have the good control of powdery mildew. Preventative strategies, at woolly bud, just before bud burst, we can apply lime sulphur. Some growers have gone away from lime sulphur because yes, it is very corrosive, but it has very good control on mites. So if you've had this season was a very high mite season because we had heat and dust and no rain. So lime sulphur will be very good for your powdery mildew spores. I'm a believer in high wettable sulphur rates. The first 3 sprays of the season, around 600 grams per 100, with a good water rate of 300 litres, and that's every 12 to 14 days with every row sprayed. A lot of growers early season will have a tendency to spray every 2nd row, but once you get to 3 or 4 leaves out, it's really important to spray every row. There's a lot of cheaper versions of wettable sulphur on the market. I strongly suggest stay with the renowned brands. Stay with Viticultural, your Microthol, Solar and Cumulus. The cheaper brands, they're cheap for a reason. During the manufacturing process, they quite often, they are skipped in a process and they don't fume in the canopy. So growers are finding that they're using a lot more sulphur, but also they're actually having powdery mildew problems once they get to berry set. It's important to spray and runoff, targeting your cordon, your bark, your canes and your shoot, and systemic fungicides need to be added into the program leading into 6 leaves. And I basically, I keep wettable sulphur in all sprays right through to harvest. So some of the systemic spray programs we can use leading into flowering. Prosper's been a very common spray over the last probably 5 years. Quite a few growers will do 2 back-to-back Prospers. It's group 5. To reduce resistance of fungicide in the vineyard, it's really important to mix up and to change your groups to avoid resistance. So we growers have been using Prosper for say 4 seasons. I would encourage you to maybe switch out to a Calendo. So Calendo, so if you've been using say Prosper for the last 4 or 5 years, maybe consider something like a Calendo, just to go from a group 5 to a group 13. Custodia is a very good product in the sense that it has 2 label rates. At the higher label rate, which is 1 litre per 1,000, it will actually have systemic activity against powdery mildew, downy and botrytis. So leading into flowering, that's a really good spray to cover all bases. And once again, wettable sulphur, your industry has 7 days withholding, which is really good. It's table grapes is 1 day and the wine industry is 35 days. Your options for systemic control leading into veraison or 35 days out is your old DMI or group 3. So you've got myphos and betadine. The thing with any of those products is when you read the label will always say that they're of a curative, so of a non-curative. So these are preventative only. So once you've got powdery mildew established in the vineyard, the horse is bolted pretty much. Good rates of sulphur on a regular basis will reduce the powdery spores, but generally won't control it 100%. Downy mildew, the rain disease. We haven't seen much of that lately, so I don't know. We need 10 mils of rain minimum at 10 degrees centigrade, and we need the leaf wetness for 24 hours. So the spores will overwinter in leaf litter. Our critical times of spraying is between October and December. The rain splasher spores will come from the soil to the foliage. So where you've got trellising, where you've got low-hanging canes, and if you've had downy mildew in previous years, those spores will live in the soil for 3 to 7 years. So the likelihood of rain splash in 10-10-24 is highly likely. There's 2 stages of downy mildew. We have primary infection. So the primary infection will occur when we've had 10-10-24, and the oil spots will occur 5 to 15 days after the rain event. Generally, the oil spots are low in numbers. You might find 1 or 3 spots per 50 metres in a row. So this one here, these are very fresh oil spots. They are quite often described in textbooks with a chocolate halo around them. So you've had your 10-10-24, and these are your initial starting point of the disease. So this is your primary infection. When the primary infection or the oil spots are left uncontrolled, we then move on to what we call the secondary infection. So the secondary infection will develop with warm, humid nights, and we only might get 1 humid night, but what that does is the oil spots then develop into a white down on the back of the leaf. If the secondary infection is not controlled, we can get up to 100,000 new oil spots, which can be carried throughout the vineyard onto infected new leaves. And that's generally carried through air, moisture and humidity. So it's really critical to control the oil spot during flowering, otherwise you can have significant crop loss. So here we've had on the other side of the leaf we've had the oil spot. The oil spot hasn't been controlled, so now we've had white down. During flowering, this is quite often when bunches haven't been protected, whether it's with copper or mancozeb or with a systemic, the flowers are very, very vulnerable. And then this picture here is quite often the tip of the bunch can get infected with secondary infection, but we don't know until we go into fruit set, and you'll sometimes find half the bunch has already dropped off and it's through a undetected secondary infection. So it's important to keep those sprays every 12 to 14 days. Your mancozeb, your coppers are your main disease prevention. If it's anything 24 or we do get a high rainfall event during flowering, downy mildew is very susceptible to flowers, so crop loss and flower death will occur. But once the berries get past pea-sized berries, which is 7 to 8 mils, they become a little bit more resistant. So what do we do in the event that we do get rain and it's more than 10 mils at 10 degrees for 24 hours? So if you ever apply a spray, whether it's copper or mancozeb or another systemic that is for downy mildew, and you've applied that in the vineyard 7 to 10 days before the rain event, well then you can go back in and you can just reapply another copper and another mancozeb. However, if your sprays have been drawn out or you've missed a spray or we've had really nice weather, and a lot of growers do this, they drop out their copper and mancozeb and just carry on with sulphur, and we do get a 25 mil rain event and you're caught out and it's like, well, I never sprayed leading into the rain event, then you need to go in with a curative, because once those oil spots develop and you get the secondary infection, you've got lots of spores in the vineyard and they need to be controlled. So it's really important to control the oil spots with a systemic fungicide before the white down occurs. Phos acid is highly systemic and it's probably one of the easiest and cheapest options. You can use 2 in the season and it has a 5-day pollen period up until harvest. Beyond pea-sized berries, so once the berries get to 7 to 8 mils, they are more resilient and more resistant as they have an acid in the skin. So the actual spore of the downy mildew can't adhere to the skin and can't grow and develop. But keep in mind that the leaves are still vulnerable if you get a late season infection. And you need those leaves for sugar and for ripening later in the season. Yeah, I'm nearly finished now. So, post-harvest sprays. Who's done them? Who's going to do them? So why do a post-harvest spray? I think they're important because your season has gone very long. The last time you probably put out a sulphur was probably several weeks ago. Mite activity with heat and dust has been really, really high. So you've got bud mite, you've got spotted mite, you've got lots of mites out there. You've also probably got latent powdery infection on the cane, on leaves, on rachis where you've taken the fruit off, and also mummified berries and bunches. So a good rate of sulphur, around 600 grams per 100, with either some copper or mancozeb and some nutrients like zinc, boron and molybdenum. Those 3 I like to throw in post-harvest. It's just a little bit more bud building for fruitfulness and bud health for coming into spring next year. And this needs to be done, now's a really good time. You don't want all your leaves to have dropped. You probably want about 20% leaf drop. And also you want really good coverage on those canes. Thanks for the Dried Fruit Association. A lot of this information, yes, there's some really good literature online and books, and lots of, Australia is very, we have a very good resource from a lot of the university and government departments with lots of research into downy, powdery, botrytis.